well with your soul? I was sitting here, I was going through different ones I was going to do. I surrender all. I was like, I need some old school kind of just bring you back and center you type of hymn music tonight, because we're actually going to be talking a little bit about some struggles and understanding, realizing it is well with our souls as Christians, or it should be. We're continuing our study this evening of Genesis, starting with chapter 30 and verse 1. So if you have your Bibles with you, go to Genesis 30 and 25. Verse 25 is where we'll be starting with in there. And as you're turning there, a quick recap from last week. A lot happened, so we're going to have to give you the Cliff Notes version of what we looked at last week. Jacob flees from Esau, finds a wife, Rachel, and he works for Laban for 7 years so that he can have his wife, Rachel, and the carpet was pulled out from under his feet. Instead, he was given Leah, worked another 7 years. There was Rachel. Now, mind you, this was kind of his dowry, and I told you, especially since Daniel's here, I'm always a big fan of dowries. You give the dad money for the girl that you're marrying, and the total was about $140,000, given wages that were pretty low. So I'm just saying. So anyway, Rachel and Leah, now sister wives, they're both his wife, and so he's I can't even imagine the struggle there. But they have this weird competition that starts between the two of them. Who can have the most children? Well, it was pretty easy at first, right? Because Leah was the only one that was having kids. Because we know that Jacob loved Rachel more than he did Leah. So Leah's having the kids, and Rachel's going, what's going on? What's going on? Okay, I got this. I'm going to throw in my handmaiden, right? So he's got the maidservant that's now helping out and saying, you have kids with my husband, and they will be like my children. And so she starts catching up with Leah. Leah's like, wait a minute, that's not right. And so she starts to, not produce. And so she's like, hey, I'll do the same thing. So it's this weird, I don't know, convoluted type of competition. But the long and the short of it is, once everything's said and done, we ended the chapter with Rachel. Finally, the Lord opens her womb, and she has a child by natural means. And his name is Joseph. Yes, indeed. And that's where we're going to pick up verse 25. Okay. As soon as Rachel had born Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children from whom I have served you, that I may go. For you know the service that I have given you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, if I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you, name your wages, and I will give it. Whoa. So, basically what's happening here is we see Rachel she gave birth to Joseph, and something clicked within Jacob, and she's like, okay, what in the world? I need to go. I need to leave and make my own way in the world. Go back to my home place. And that makes sense, right? Okay, so just so you know, Jacob's like close to 100 at this point. And he's just now deciding, I need to make my way in life. I need to make my own walk, my own lot, spread the wings and all that good stuff. Maybe he's a late bloomer, I don't know. But he's doing the right thing. He goes to Laban and says, all right, it's time for me to go. I got to get out of here. He doesn't just take the family and run off. He says, okay, it's time to go. But here's the thing. Laban has his own plan. Laban was wise enough to realize that the reason why he had so much stuff is not because he was so cool or so smart. It's because the Lord had blessed Jacob. He's receiving the overflow from the blessings that was on Jacob. And so Laban counters. The guy's about to leave, and he's like, I'll tell you what, name your price. How do you walk away from that? Name your price. You got it. Verse 29, Jacob said to him, you yourself know how I have served you and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn. But now, when shall I provide for my own household also? He said, what shall I give you? Jacob said, you shall not give me anything if you will do this for me. I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all the flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen. Laban said, good, let it be as you have said. There's a lot of stuff going on in here. And gang, one of the things I want us to be looking at is you saw probably the optics, the picture, the PowerPoint. You're talking about Jacob wrestling with the Lord. And I think this is a place for all of us to ask ourselves. And as we're going through this, I want us to be looking at it. So what is it that maybe you're struggling with the Lord in? The Lord, maybe he's shown you how he's protected and provided and all that in your life. Is there something you're struggling with tonight? Just be thankful for that. All right, let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for your holy word. And I thank you for all the folks that are here tonight, Lord. I thank you for the rain. Oh, we so needed it. And Father, I pray that you just continue to guide us and open our minds to see those areas that maybe we're keeping from you. Those areas in which we're struggling with, whether it be our own flesh or struggling because we don't want to let go and allow you to be God. Father, I pray that you help us to see those areas and just submit, surrender all, and know that it is well with our souls. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we have this back and forth here. Laban says, name your price. And Jacob is now deciding he's going to start to bargain, isn't he? And he's bargaining from a position of power. Because Laban wants him to stay. Jacob says, I'm ready to leave, man. I'm ready to leave. But he says, all right, I need you to come up with your price. And Jacob, being pretty shrewd, I don't think he thought this off the cuff. I think he was thinking through things. Well, what if he comes back? Maybe he's talking to his wives. He says, well, what if dad says, what if, name your price? What are you going to say? So Jacob starts off by reminding Laban that he had nothing when he got there. You had nothing before I got here. But since I've been here, you see all the stuff that you have. And I'm the one that has freely given of my time, my service. And I've served you extremely well. I've tended to your animals. And we see that blessed. But the problem is that with Jacob, nothing is his, is it? All this stuff is Laban's. All the blessing, all the overflow, it's Laban's. So when he says he wants to spread his wings and start flying, how do you do that? You got nothing. How is that going to happen? So he unpacks his plan, and I'm sure at first Laban's super excited, right? He's super excited because he goes, look, you don't have to give me anything. If you do as I ask, if you agree to my deal. And this whole deal is, for those of you that have gone through some classes in biology or genetics, you have an understanding of basic genetics, DNA, alleles, that type of thing. You're looking at this plan, you're going, what? How's this going to work out? This makes no sense. You didn't have that understanding back then. So I don't know where this plan came from, but that's what he was saying. And just so you know, back then, all the sheep were white, and most animals were pure in color because there hadn't been a lot of genetic disposition and mutations to that point. So when he talks about speckled and striped, he's talking about the anomalies. This is the small, super small percentage of the sheep that just aren't completely all the way whatever color. And so he says, look, just give me those anomalies and I'll be good. And in the future, if you see any of your animals, any of the animals that don't have specks and spots but are pure and this, that, and the other, just count them as yours. They're yours. Assume that I stole them because that's not what I'm going to have in my flock. I'm going to have these type of things. So that's what he's going to do. Laban says that sounds like a good idea because he knows the percentages are going to be pretty small when it comes to those critters and what Jacob's actually going to receive. So he's like, okay, some more free labor. I'll take it. You just get the speckled and the spotted, right? Yep, that's it. And so he's going to go into some really weird stuff in a minute. It's going to go against any of our understanding of genetics and physical laws. But here's where he goes with this. But the day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white on the stick. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks towards the striped and all the black and the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flocks were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flocks, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Thus, the man increased greatly and had flocks, large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Okay. There's no biology class that I can break this down to because it doesn't make sense at all. You put a stick near the trough, and suddenly, if it's striped, they're going to breed striped lamb. Okay, whatever. But just to be sure, Laban says, I'll take your deal. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all those speckled and spotted and all the ones that we've removed, and I'm going to send them off with my sons. 3 days journey. I'm going to send them off. They're a ways away because they don't want any funny stuff. Don't want you to be coming in and doing anything weird. So it's now, there's no way, you can't do anything. You can't mess with it because my sons have got it. You're going to watch my sheep. And, Jacob's like, all right, I got this. And he goes through his plan. I don't know how he knew, but somehow it worked. And not only did he get the most multiplication, the most of the sheep and the goats and all that good stuff, but he also got the stronger of the flocks. And so, again, with this stuff, I can't explain it. I wish I could, but that's the way it ended up. And I'm assuming that the whole time that he's putting these sticks up there, they're mating and they're coming out with these striped and speckled, the whole time he's muttering under his breath, make me wait 14 years to marry my wife. I got you. That's probably what he's doing, right? Can you see that? He's probably a little upset. He's like, stripes on these trees. I'm just assuming I probably would be something similar. All right, chapter 31. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what our father's he has gained all this wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. Well, that's not good. There's not a good start here, right? He's got the plan in place. He probably wasn't thinking of this. I know how this is going to work. I'm going to get all the stronger, and I'm going to get the most of all the sheep and the flocks and the herds and all that good stuff. It's going to be awesome. He didn't think about the repercussions. How is anyone else going to be thinking? I'm not sure he was thinking this through in terms of, no, Laban's going to be okay with getting a smaller flock and the weaker ones. No, he wouldn't. And the sons, they're not going to be happy, are they? Why are the sons not happy? That's their inheritance, man. And suddenly it's dwindling, and Jacob's got this huge flock, and they can't figure out how in the world he's doing it. But he's got a bunch of them. They're strong, and Dad's flock is weak and just sickly and just not as many. So they're a little upset. And so it wasn't just Laban's sons. It was also Laban himself. He was usually probably pretty cordial, but not anymore. Now the Lord points this out and calls Jacob to come home. And Jacob was going to go back home after the birth of Joseph, right? But he had an offer that was just too good to pass up. And sometimes that's what happens in our lives. We have an offer that's too good to pass up. Maybe the Lord said, I want you to start this or go here or bring that or whatever it is. And then you get countered. Well, no, if you stay, then whatever it is. And it's too sweet. And you're like, I've got to take it. And so we find ourselves staying. Or maybe, if that hasn't happened to you, maybe, have you ever gotten a promotion and your friends have not gotten that promotion? Or you're moving up in the system and your friends are still at whatever level. And your friends start acting just weird towards you, mean, not congenial. I mean, you may just have to say, well, you just have to suck it up, Buttercup, because that's the way it works. Or maybe the Lord is using that to kind of guide you to begin something new, to get you out of that environment that you're currently in. Because he can do that. He's been known to do it. So, all right, verse 4. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. That's ridiculous. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if I said, then the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate with the flocks are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land, and return to the land of your kindred. So at this point, Jacob has to make a decision, doesn't he? He can keep on trying to stay there, knowing how conniving Laban can be, and he could feel that anger coming every day off of the sons and dear old dad. So he can try that, or he can do what he says he was going to do in verse 25. It's time to get going, get stepping, get me out of here. God said to go, and he's like, let me just stay a little while. So what does he do? He wisely calls the sister wives, right? Not all the wives, he calls the OGs, Rachel and Leah, and says, hey, let's talk. We've got some decisions to make here, and I think this is where we are. And so he's breaking down the reason why he wants to go. Number one, your dad is no longer a fan. Number two, your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. Now, we don't have this recorded in here, but maybe it's the whole, hey, spotted, yeah, I think we're going to change it. Now you have the pure white and black goats. That's the one that you're going to have. I'm going to have the spotted now. Okay, now we're going to switch. Who knows how that happened, but he was changing the wages 10 different times, and it wasn't right, so he's getting cheated. And then finally, the Lord has come to me in a dream, has told me to beat feet back home. How the girls do you think are going to respond? It's dear old dad. Come on. How's Lorelai respond? She doesn't want to leave dad. All their friends, all their family, all the things that they know are right there. So why would they leave? Not to mention this whole, my brother's trying to kill me thing. And you want to go where? You want to go back home? Isn't that where your brother lives? And he's trying to kill you? Okay. How's that going to work out? Okay, verse 14. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. That is so good. Can I just tell you, husbands, please, 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 if you have something that you need prayer about, if you have a decision to make sure that you are bringing your wife in there and you guys pray together about this. It's so important. And that's what Jacob does. And he pulls in Rachel and Leah, and they're like, look, our dad has not been a saint to us. He hasn't given us a cent. He's stolen our stuff. He sold us out. He's given us no inheritance. So let's get out of here. And so they're basically confirming it. And I absolutely love that. Especially if I have something I'm thinking about doing, and I bring it to Amy, and I'm like, hey, honey, this is what I'm thinking about. And she's like, so she prays with me. She'll, lift that up in prayer and encourage me. And it's just vital that you bring that before your wife as well as the Lord. Let her pray for you to discern that. And husbands as well. Wives, bring it to you, husbands. All right. So let me kind of go back a little bit and just say, To this point, it has been 20 years since Jacob and that whole ladder situation where he'd gotten the covenant, the promise from God. But yet, in these 20 years, do we see a lot of Jacob praying, making sacrifices, talking about God much at all? Yeah. But God is gracious and God is patient. He's been waiting for this moment in which Jacob finally comes to understand that he needs to come home. And maybe there's some folks out here that are running away from maybe something the Lord has told you to do. A plan maybe he's given to you and you pushed it out of your head or said in time or maybe just not yet. I can tell you this, God can outwait you every single time. He can. He's got an eternity, doesn't he? He can take those blessings and those mercies and everything that he's given you during that time frame and you're still not answering or responding. He can take those blessings and create some tough situations for you to have to go through to help remind you of who you're supposed to be listening to besides your own wallet or your own brain, your own decisions. Stop running and be obedient. I can tell you it happened to me. It certainly happened to you too. Verse 17, so Jacob rose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he gained, the livestock and the possession that he had acquired in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsmen with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. So, Jacob has a plan, blessed by God, confirmed by the sister wives, and it's now time to go. So Jacob waits until Laban goes out there and he shears his sheep. He's packing everything's up. He's going to shear his sheep. It's that time, so he brings out all his fold, and he's shearing the sheep, and that's when Jacob decides it's time to go. But it's also the time in which Rachel says, what? You know what? Payback. I'm going to go in and take my dad's little trinkets, his little false gods that he had set up, his Baals. And that's really what they were, these household little trinkets that people would have for like fertility and harvest and protection and prosperity. These little tiny trinket gods that they would have. But what's really scary is during that time frame, if someone stole your gods, which is kind of funny by itself. If your God can be stolen, what kind of God is he? Right? But if your God can be stolen, then that's punishable by death. So this is a pretty risky chance that Rachel is taking here by going in and stealing I got you, Dad. Never give me anything. Won't buy me a car. Won't do, whatever it is. So it's like, I got that. And unfortunately, it's a big gamble here. And this one sin that she's doing by stealing these trinkets is going to have to be led by a second sin later on that we will see. All right, so Jacob's going as fast as he can in his caravan. How fast do you think he can go, considering he's got all these kids, he's got his wives, he's got his livestock, he's got all his belongings and everything else that he's traveling? Think he can travel pretty fast and pretty far? That's right. They didn't have 2 liters back in the day, right? Just can't deal with it. Whatever it is. But yeah, so it's probably guesstimated. It's been guesstimated that he was probably about 60 miles ahead of Laban. Because he was gone 3 days of journey. He's gone, right? And Laban suddenly finds out and he goes, what? So now he's hot. He's pursuing Jacob and his crew. Now, Laban doesn't have all the stuff that Jacob's got in terms of he's got to carry all of his possessions. It's probably him and his posse, right? Going fast and furious after them. And so we're looking 7 days journey, They're getting really close. They're hot on their trails. They can smell what they're cooking. Not the rock. You smell what they're cooking, and they can also see their tents. That's how close they are. So they're about there. And I'm telling you, Laban's got to be so mad right now. He's got to be. Not only did he take all my stuff, took my little false gods and everything else like that, but what did God say to him? God says, look, man, don't say anything good or bad to him. Why is that such a big deal? I mean, I get the bad, right? That's my boy Jacob. Don't mess with my boy. Don't say anything bad about me. We've been there, right? Why not say something good? Hey, man, bless you. Say that again. Divert God's plans with influence God's plan. Like if he says, look, I'll give you all my sheep as well as your sheep if you stay. Because it worked out once, right? At first he's getting ready to go. He's like, paying price. Oh, I got it. So he says, don't say anything good or bad. So he's stomping mad. Would he listen to those instructions? Dun, dun, dun. Verse 25. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done, that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why do you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and song, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you long greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid. For I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel, the wife he really, really loved, had stolen them. Okay, so here we go. He's overtaken them. Jacob's just sitting there. Laban's hot, ready to jerk a knot in this kid for taking his daughters, which I really don't think he cared about. Whatever. But his possessions, what he thought was his possessions, his daughters, his fake idols, all that stuff. And so he's ready to go at it. And then he remembers, I can't do this because God said not to say anything good or bad. So what do I do? What do you do in that situation? Simply ask questions, right? And questions aren't good or bad, right? In nature, you can't. So he says, hey, why'd you flee? Why'd you trick me? Which Laban has zero leg to stand on here. And what did Jacob say? I was afraid. But do you see what Laban was doing? Why did you leave? Why did you take off? Don't you know I would have thrown you this big, fat celebration feast and called out all the friends and family and just invited everybody, and we would have just had a good old time together? You think you would have done that? You know how that party would have culminated, the end of it? Probably a knife in the back of Jacob, right? It's like, okay, I got you. Now it's all mine. So anyway, that's where he was. Jacob gets a turn. He replies, I was afraid. And that's interesting considering all the promises that God has just given to him and the protection that he's enjoyed all these years. But it's human, so I get it. Then he says, look, if anybody's stolen your stuff, go ahead and get them. Put them to death, not knowing that Rachel had stolen these little trinkets. So basically, Jacob is giving Laban permission to go search all the tents, to tear stuff up, to find these little trinkets if he had stolen something. And if they did go, we'll kill whoever it is. Now, basically, he's giving permission to Laban to go ahead and tear up his tents and search. But here's the deal. How closely do you think Jacob was watching Laban? How closely would you watch him? Knowing what he's like and just making sure that he doesn't pull out one of those little fake gods from his pocket or from his sleeve and goes, here it is, I found it. So I guarantee he's got somebody looking at him like a hawk. And he's tearing up everything and he doesn't find anything because Rachel, put them in her camel saddle, and sat on them. That's not good. She had stolen them. Ay, ay, ay. But I can't imagine it's very strong gods, considering that Rachel was able to put them in her little saddleback and sit on them. But that's the kind of God, apparently, that they served there. All right, so basically what we're looking at in this scenario is that Laban is hot and Rachel has stolen something. And Laban's using this as an opportunity to go ahead and act like, Jacob did something really, really bad, considering like the stealing of the stuff, of the idols. But Jacob's not buying into it. So he tears the stuff up. Sorry, guys, I'm going to another chapter here. So basically, what happened to me is I somehow missed a bunch of verses here. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and to Leah's tent, looking at verse 33. So Laban went to Jacob's tent and to Leah's tent and to the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but he did not find them. And he said to her, let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me. So he searched, but he did not find the household goods. All right, that's the part I was missing in here. So as I was telling you that they were in her saddle, I'm going, I don't remember reading that in our little section that we just read. But that's basically what's happened. She's got smart and she put it into the saddle of her camel. And when Dad comes up, what does she say? I'm in the way of women. I can't get up. I'm sorry. So she was on her period is what she was saying. And thus begins that excuse that has been used from generation to generation by some women to not do what they want something. I said some women. Not all women, but I'm just saying. But I know I got to watch myself. Oh, boy. I was talking to Donna earlier. I was like, I'm going to go here, but I'm just not sure if I'm going to. But everybody's good-natured. Everybody's fun. They enjoy laughing and stuff. Like, they'll get it. They'll understand, As teenagers, your physical education teacher comes up and says, hey, I need you to participate. Not today. I just started or whatever. You get it. And the guys are like, you got to go, right? You guys can't pull that stuff, can we? I'm not feeling so well. Rub some dirt on it. Go. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it is, Pam. Laban bought it. He never found the trinkets, which was good news for all. Then Jacob becomes angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, what is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have fell through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that you may decide between us two. These 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flock. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I've been in your house. I've served you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. Can you picture this? 20 years. 20 years of rage and anger bubbling up. And here it is, the final straw. Not only did Laban catch up with him, which I'm sure was like, oh, man, but he's accusing him of something that, as far as Jacob knows, he didn't do. Nobody in his family did. He was just using his excuse. He tore all my folks' tents. It's a hot mess all around, and he did it, and he came back empty-handed because, nope, we didn't do anything. And so he sees his freedom, and he's like, Laban is not going to take that away from me. And so something clicks, and he lets him have it. Everything from the whole accusing him thing, the switching wives thing, the changing his wages 10 times thing. He brings up how faithful he's been in serving, working for Laban. He's working in the freezing cold. He's working in the heat when it was scorching heat. If an animal had a miscarriage, he's the one that paid for it. If an animal was tore up by animals, he's the one that paid for it. And he finishes off by saying, look, you deserve the dream from God that says, say nothing good and nothing bad. You deserve it because God saw how poorly you treated me, and he stepped in to make things right. Otherwise, you'd have taken everything. I'd have nothing. How good did that feel to get off his chest, you think? Oh, you think so? 20 years of holding that in? Oh, you ever, not that y'all would ever do this, but have you ever wanted to tell your boss how you felt about the way they were treating you or acting or whatever? Y'all wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't. I'm just saying, just if you had a chance to. I find it very interesting. Maybe y'all haven't thought of this, but I think this very interesting. I'm surprised there are not more fistfights, brawls, cops called at retirement parties. Think about it. What have you got to lose? There's your boss. Blowing the little party. You got your little cake there. 20 years, and now you're staring at the one you're about to retire. But people are good. People are good. Generally good inside, right? Verse 43. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar-sahadath, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. Therefore he named it Gilead in Mizpah. For he said, the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and the pillar which I have set between you and me? This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me, to do harm. The God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, the God of the father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country, and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. So, Jacob just let Laban have it, didn't he? He released the 20 years of rage. And Laban, being a pretty proud man himself, what do you think he was feeling about this time, receiving 20 years of anger bubbling up? So this is probably what I'm thinking. He's not justifying his actions. He's not coming up with excuses. But he starts off, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here. Look, you little punk. You had nothing when you came to me. And now look at what you have. Look at all these things that you have. But they're not yours. They're mine. That's my kids. Those are my grandkids. Those are my flocks. Well, what can I do? God said, yeah, what can I do? And so, instead of going bare knuckle, toe to toe, they decide to make a covenant. They take a heap of stones and set it up, and Laban makes this really weird kind of one-way covenant. It basically says, you better take care of my daughters or God will see and judge you. You think he really cared about those daughters of his? But he adds to it, look, neither one of us will come into each other's territories to do harm. Okay? We can visit one another. I don't see Jacob doing that. But we can visit one another, just not to do harm. And if you've ever seen those, Mizpah hearts? You know, you take one half and you give it to the other one, and it has this little verse written on here. That's where this comes from. Doesn't sound so nice when you read the whole context, huh? Nope. So they both agree in the covenant, and Jacob offers a sacrifice, and the crew all stayed there overnight. Then Laban gets up, kissed his children, grandchildren, and left the next morning to go home. Now let me ask you this. He's there all night. How much sleep did Rachel get? Why do you think she didn't get much sleep? What's that? Did she sleep on that camel all night long? Is that what happened? Or did she go and lay somewhere, but she kept her one eye open in any movement or whatever? I can't imagine, because all it took is just one person finding out. Her getting off that camel and one falls. Whoa. Trouble. Y'all got it in you to go a little further? Okay. Chapter 32. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's camp." So he called the name of the place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I've sojourned with Laban and stayed until now, have oxen, donkey, flocks, male servants, and female servants, and have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight." And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother Esau, and he's coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps, thinking, if Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. Okay, this is that aha moment that we talked about earlier. This aha moment for Jacob. Will he get it? Will he understand kind of what God is trying to teach him? God spoke to him and says, get out of here and go home. Now he's seeing some angels, right? And he calls the place, Manham, which is two hosts, meaning God's camp and our camp. So two places. And I just wonder if he's looking back at this point and he's seeing all these signs and how God had taken care of him and blessed him and protected him over all these 20 years of his sojourning out in that area, and going, you know what? I've been trying to do this all wrong. I should have been listening to him the whole time. God said he's going to protect me and bless me ever since I was there at Bethel, before I even found my wife. And now, again, I'm seeing more angels. So, one problem's gone, and that's Laban. But still another problem remains, and that is Esau. I haven't read anywhere in here so far that Jacob sent an "I'm sorry" card, and that Esau returned it saying, I forgive you. So last Jacob knows, his brother wants to kill him badly. So, like we expect, Jacob decides he's going to create a plan. He sends his servants ahead of him to tell Esau, in case you're wondering, I'm doing fine. What I'm going to do, I'm sending, I've got plenty of animals, goods, and servants. I'm coming not to get my inheritance. I'm just coming home. So just basically giving Esau a heads up. Look, guy, I'm not coming back. I know I got the birthright. I know I got the blessing. I got them both. But I'm not coming to collect. I've got my own stuff. I'm good. And so the servants do what's asked, and they're all kinds of excited, right? I see him, they're like, oh, yes, I saw your brother. He looks great, by the way, and he's doing wonderful. And so I told him that you're on your way, and he got so excited, they invited 400 of his closest personal friends to come and meet you. So Jacob's not taking this as this is a surprise, happy celebration party. He's thinking this is an army. This is a declaration of war. They're coming at me. So what does he do? He divides the camp into two. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, and O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I'm not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you've shown to your servant. With only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hands of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitudes. Jacob was all kinds of afraid. And what do we do when we're afraid, whether you're religious or not? Pray, right? There we go. I don't care what religion or lack of religion you may have. If you're scared to death, you're going to find religion real quick, aren't you? So he's coming at him with 400 different men, and he's afraid. And so he prays. And this is a sincere, heartfelt prayer. And this is what God's looking for. He wants us to come and tell him how we're feeling emotionally, not just, God, I'm sorry I did this. God, I did this because I'm weak. Because I whatever it is. And just let out your heart to him. Not that he doesn't already know it. So he starts off the prayer by reminding God of his promises to Jacob, just in case he forgot. And he says, I'm not worthy of these promises. I crossed over the Jordan with nothing but a staff, a stick. And now I have enough folks to split into two. And we're going to see the stick, the staff later on. We'll have it with him even when he dies. So Jacob tells God that he's afraid of Esau and what he might do. And he's saying basically, I'm afraid, but you got me, right? 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 So he's probably waiting for an answer. All right, now this is getting really weird here. But you see part of this plan unfold. So he stayed there the night, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking cows and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he handed over to his servants. Every drove by itself and said to his servants, pass on ahead of me and put a space between drove. He instructed the first, when Esau, my brother, meets you and asks you, to whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? You shall say, they belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau. And moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third and all who follow the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him. And he shall say, moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterwards thou shalt see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he himself stayed the night in the camp. So here's the rest of the plan. He's buttering up Esau. That's his plan. I'm going to butter him up. Takes like 580 different animals and sends it on ahead. And he doesn't just send them all at once. No. It gets better. He's sending them in waves. So the first wave comes. Esau's like, what is that? It's like, these are presents from your brother Jacob. You're welcome. And then the second wave, a little ways away. It's not like they're right behind each other. So he starts moving back towards Jacob. He's coming after him. Second wave comes. A bunch more. What is this? Oh, these are presents from your servant, your Lord, your servant Jacob. And then the third wave comes, and it's like, oh my gosh. Now, for me, if I get a bunch of animals, 580 animals sent to me, I'm going, where am I putting them? This is not a gift. This is a burden. How much do they cost to feed? I mean, but back then, this was a truly big thing, a big gift. It was a show of how well he was doing. He was all kind of scared, Jacob was. He's trying to be obedient, but he's trying to trust in the promises of the Lord. He's having a tough time doing that. But God's just about to work it out in him in just a few seconds here. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the fords of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket. And Jacob's hip was put out of joint, and he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for the day is broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what's your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The sun rose up on him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. Okay, so Jacob gets a little weird here at the beginning of this, doesn't he? Listen, guys, as a man, as a father, as a husband, what is one of your main responsibilities? Say that again, Mike. From the Marine, to protect. What does Jacob do? He sends his wives and his kids ahead of him, right? They're there at Jabbok. And earlier in this text here, just before the one we read, he was worried that Esau was going to come after the children and the wives, right? He sends them on ahead. It's going to the place called Jabbok, which means separated. And it makes sense because that's exactly what has to happen here. So Jacob's alone. And God needed Jacob to be alone. He needed him to have nothing to rely on except the Lord, so that he could teach him that his own strength is nothing. And so it's nighttime. He sends his family away. It's just him. And imagine picturing the scene. I like us to get in there. It's dark. You hear the frogs chirping or croaking, whatever they're doing. It's dark. He's all alone. He doesn't know if Esau is behind him. Did he ambush him? How's this working? And suddenly, out of the blue, this WWF fighter comes in. It wasn't Randy the Macho Man Savage. It wasn't Hulk Hogan. It wasn't even Nature Boy Ric Flair. This was the Lord himself that came and wrestled. And the word wrestled here, that means dust. It means, in Hebrew, it means they weren't just kind of locking up. They were on the ground, scrapping, is what was happening here. Imagine how you would feel. I don't care. Even if they didn't wrestle, imagine you're sitting there thinking you're alone and suddenly you feel somebody's hand on your shoulder. But listen, Jacob did not initiate this wrestling match. It was the Lord. And Jacob was trying to persevere, but he was trying to really defend himself of his own strength. But he could gain no advantage. And after he used all of his strength and still did not prevail, the Lord touched his hip and it came out of joint. Now, let me ask you this, because this seems like a weird thing to be reading about. Jacob wrestled with God, and God ended up going, okay, I give, kind of thing. Or like, oh, okay, let me go. It's sun's up. Do you think Jacob could last 1 second with God in a real wrestling match? So what is he saying here in these verses? What is he trying to tell us? He was making a point. You can use all your strength, your power, or you can rely on the power of God, who can touch, change, heal the course of your struggle in an instant. Jacob had gotten the promises from God, the direction from God to go back home. He saw a camp of angels on his way back, and he is still scared of Esau. Even after praying, he's still scared to death. He's plotting and scheming under his own strength and power. Was it God that told him to break his team into camps? To send a bunch of animals on? To send his wives and children ahead of him? It wasn't God that did that. This was Jacob's own scheme and strength, trying to use his own strength to solve an issue. But for 20 years, Jacob had been relying on his own strength. For 20 years, God had been patiently waiting for Jacob to realize, I'm here. Waiting to be alone with Jacob, to realize the power that God had. And this was the culmination of all that. And I know it seems strange he had to have him alone, but think about where we are today. We don't like to be alone, do we? Computers, telephones, TVs, iPads, even books as a distraction. We don't like to be alone with our own thoughts or by ourselves, do we? Yeah, just look at it. What happens when women go to the bathroom? And they're with friends? Come on. Y'all aren't going to say anything now. Aha, got you this time, Pam. I'm going to the bathroom. Come with me. But anyway, we don't like to be by ourselves. But that's where he needs us sometimes to be alone so that we can hear more clearly. So this match is about over, but Jacob is still holding on. He's realizing that he can't take the blessing like he did with his dad. He couldn't bargain to get the blessing like he did with his brother. He simply had to hold on, to cling to the one who gives the blessing freely, to receive the blessing. And saints, the Lord wrestles with us, doesn't he? He absolutely does. And he tries to get us to let go of our pride, our money, our relationship, whatever's not honoring of God, our language, our gossip, whatever it is. But so often we refuse to let go. And so we continue to struggle. And maybe God gets to a point, he says, okay, I think you got it now. So let me go ahead and show you how weak you are, and just touches that place. And the Lord asked Jacob his name. And this is not because he didn't know his name, but he wanted Jacob to say it. What's his name mean? Heel catcher, trickster. That's what it means. But Jacob was given a new name now. His name would be Israel, which means prince with God or God-governed man is what it means. Jacob had striven with God and prevailed not against God, but against his own nature. That's what he prevailed against. His own instincts to try to do things in his own strength at whatever the cost. He now has a new name, but he also has a new walk, doesn't he? Funny how that worked out, isn't it? He's now walking with a limp to go meet his brother. So I guess the staff came in handy after all. But I love how Warren Wiersbe puts it. He says, the way to have power with God is to be broken by God. The way to have power with God is to be broken by God. Yeah, that's good stuff. That's a t-shirt idea. I can't come up with it because Warren Wiersbe came up with it. And Jacob needed that wrestling match desperately because he was not walking, trusting, or living the power of God. So Jacob asked a stranger, what's your name? Finally, he was interested in the God who had protected and blessed and kept him throughout these 20 plus years. And so he names the place Peniel, which means face of God, saying, for I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. And because of the place that the Lord had touched Jacob, he walked away, again, heading for the showdown with his brother in a limp. And we get a side note that the Jews don't eat that sinew on the thigh by the hip bone there. They don't eat that because of this narrative. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, y'all have been patient. I certainly appreciate it. But this is where we're going to stop tonight with the struggle, with the wrestling match with Jacob. And we're going to pick up next week, and we're going to see that fantastic reunion. That's going to be good. All right, let's go, Lord, and pray. Father God, again, we thank you. We come to you just so much that we could learn through this narrative, this truth, this illustration that we see in the life of Jacob. Lord, help us to stop struggling and using our own strength, Lord. Help us to rely on you. Help us not to be swayed by smooth voices or words of affirmation from those who wish to do us harm. But instead, help us to be obedient, Lord, that when you tell us to come or to go or to whatever, then we do so. And Father, I pray for anyone here tonight that has anything that they need to put before you, Lord. Anything that they're struggling with, anything that they are questioning, Lord, I pray that you just bless them with the wisdom they need in order to make the decisions that they need to make, to let go of the things they need to let go of. But in all things, let us give you praise, honor, and glory. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right.